The winner is Armoire.
We had a great time recognizing the top innovators, entrepreneurs, startups, and technologies from Seattle and the Pacific Northwest this week at the 2025 GeekWire Awards, presented by Astound Business Solutions.
It is not a surprise to any of you that we are losing community outside of these walls in this country, but here it feels alive and well.
One of my favorite moments from the event was this acceptance speech by Ambika Singh of Armoire, the clothing rental startup and winner of Workplace of the Year, sponsored by JLL.
My oldest friend, the people who have supported me along the way, there's literally every table. There are so many of you.
Workplace of the Year recognizes exceptional work environments and extraordinary company cultures.
We believe in each other, and we've taken that to our teams and to our organizations. And I said to many of you this evening, this would be the award that would mean the most to me. And it's true, I'm a big crier, so we're going to not try to go that direction. But the reason this means so much to me is because when I hang it up, I just want to know that we added value into people's lives. And that's what this means. So thank you for that. I so appreciate it.
Of course, AI was a recurring theme among many of the winners and nominees. But there was also another topic on the minds of many of the leaders in the crowd and on stage.
It doesn't matter how hard we work, and we have an amazing community that's almost 250 strong, if our state doesn't help us.
This is Aviel Ginzburg of Foundations, a new community space that supports Seattle innovators and entrepreneurs, one of the honorees in the Geeks Give Back category, presented by BECU.
We can make Seattle and Washington an amazing, more equitable, and better place to be an entrepreneur and build a business, but we all need to be paying attention because that's not going to be possible if the state doesn't want us to.
This turbulent economic and political environment, both locally and nationally, was a recurring theme in my interviews with finalists, winners, and tech community leaders as they arrived for the event. So how are they navigating the uncertainty, and what's next? That's coming up this week on the GeekWire podcast, presented by Astound Business Solutions. Hi, everybody. It's Todd Bishop coming to you this week from the Showbox Sodo in Seattle, where we're about to open the doors for the 2025 GeekWire Awards, presented by Astound Business Solutions, recognizing the top entrepreneurs, technologies, and startups in the Pacific Northwest technology scene. This week on the show, I'm going to be talking with attendees and finalists as they arrive for the VIP reception in advance of the event, about some of the key challenges they're facing in their businesses, how they're adapting to them, and in line with this year's theme, classic video games, we're going to be talking with them about their favorite video games, what they've learned from them, and perhaps how they've applied those lessons to their work lives today. All right, I am here at the GeekWire Awards with Joseph Williams, the recipient tonight of the Public Policy Champion for Innovation Award. Joseph is with the Washington State Department of Commerce. Joseph, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Todd. It's great to be here.
WTIA is presenting this award tonight, and you're the latest in a series of recipients annually, but it really recognizes someone who bridges the tech community and the world of government. One of the things that I really liked in the profile that Taylor Soper, my colleague, wrote about you was just how pragmatic you are, Joseph, about the strengths, but also the challenges that the Seattle region and Washington State face in technology. What are some of the things that you're navigating, the biggest points of change that you're navigating right now, and how are you adapting to them?
So the biggest change right now is the budget that was passed has a lot of revenue items. You guys ran a good article summarizing how this is likely to impact the industry. So I'm communicating a lot with the industry stakeholders about the path forward is golden, not doom and gloom.
You've got two competing interests there, well, multiple competing interests, but on one side, the state needs more revenue. On the other side, the tech industry needs to thrive. How do you balance those two interests?
Well, the biggest thing is to make sure that we don't do anything that chases tech away. And so most of tech wants to pay taxes. They're not trying to dodge the taxes. They just want to know that the taxes are being used for something productive. And right now, they're not convinced. So part of my job will be to work with them to say, here's where the money's going, another $1 billion for special ed, housing, fentanyl mitigation. and get them to buy in on that.
Do you think you're going to be able to make that case?
I've already had about a dozen meetings on this. I think it's going to work. I think the biggest problem is going to be startup founders who have a significant cap table interest, who are looking at the increase in the capital gains tax saying, that little jump could pay for my chateau on Lake Tahoe. Maybe I should change my residence to Nevada. So we got to deal with that.
Another thing that you said in the story was that Seattle and Washington State are God's country for software. And of course, that's been the case for many years. But a big part of your focus is also hardware and semiconductors and everything like that. How bullish are you on the potential long term for the Seattle region and Washington State to expand into other areas beyond software that could strengthen the tech industry long term?
So we're already a minor center for semiconductors down in Clark County around Vancouver. We do a lot of supportive industry for Intel, which is across the river. The reality is the next boom is probably going to be quantum, and we're working very hard with IonQ and Microsoft and Amazon on making sure that we land a big chunk of the quantum economy here in Washington. And I think the good news there is quantum isn't mass production like semiconductor chips. These are custom, they're almost like Lamborghinis of computers. And so the workforce is different, it's more skilled, and it's more appropriate to what we have here in King County and the rest of the state.
One of the finalists tonight for the GeekWire Awards is Microsoft, which doesn't always show up at what's typically more of a startup-oriented awards event, but because of their work in quantum with their Majorana processor, they are one of the finalists in one of the key categories.
And the important thing there is Microsoft did a lot of that design work down in Santa Barbara, but they did a lot of the engineering work here in Washington, in Purdue, and Copenhagen, and they actually built the prototype here in Washington. So we play a significant role in supporting what Microsoft does in quantum.
And of course, you also have Amazon and others here, so I could see where that could be a potential engine of growth in the future.
Everybody forgets, University of Washington had 2 Nobel Prize winners in quantum, so we're not pikers.
All right, Joseph, another thing that you do in your job is that you explain legislation and you write a lot of reports. How is AI impacting your job? Is it making it any easier to do those types of things?
So I personally use Claude. I know a lot of people in commerce use ChatGPT or some of the other products. Claude is an amazing first draft of anything. I upload a piece of legislation, I ask my prompt questions. It gives me a fantastic summary. It's wrong about 20% of the time, but I just have to balance it out. It's an amazing shortcut. It's like having 10 interns on steroids.
All right. In line with tonight's theme, which is retro video games, Joseph, were you much of a gamer growing up, or have you been a gamer over the years?
All my life.
What's your favorite game?
Missile Command.
Missile Command. Which platform was that for?
It was a console game that was in bars. So when I was a grad student, we did a lot of Missile Command. People who are my age will know what I'm talking about.
Any lessons, life lessons, work lessons that you can draw from your mastery of Missile Command that you might apply to your career or your life today?
It's okay to cheat.
Is that the message you want to leave people with on the GeekWire podcast?
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure.
All right, well, that is our public policy innovation champion, Joseph Williams. This is a category presented by WTIA. Joseph, I always appreciate talking with you, and it's always fun. Thank you.
Todd, good to see you again.
I'm here with Emer Dooley. She is site director for Creative Destruction Lab, and she is one of the recipients of the Geeks Give Back Award tonight here at the GeekWire Awards, presented by BECU. Emer, it's great to have you here.
Thanks.
So for people who are not familiar with Creative Destruction Lab, tell us about it.
So Creative Destruction Lab, the name actually comes from an Australian economist. It's about companies that create waves of destruction by having something that's a quantum leap better. Basically, we're a mentoring program for super deep tech startups in 2 areas. One, computational health, and the other is in industrial AI or manufacturing. And we don't take any equity, we don't charge any fees, and it's a super cool program for any startup.
And it's affiliated with the University of Washington.
It is affiliated, and in fact, it's one of these truly cross-campus, so it's housed in the business school, but it's a combination, meaning people give us money from computer science, from CoMotion, from the College of Engineering, and hopefully medicine.
So, in your organization or actually in the landscape for the organizations that you work with and the entrepreneurs that you work with. What are the biggest changes you're seeing right now here in late April 2025, and how are you navigating them?
That reminds me of my dean saying, okay, do you have any concerns at the federal level right now? And I'm like, surely you jest. Oh boy, changes. But from the kinds of companies that we take in, so we started during the pandemic and we saw the problems with the supply chain. We said, oh my God, we've got to help digitize manufacturing in this country. So we started a manufacturing cohort. Shoot me. Stupidest idea we ever did. It was not very hip. And as you know, people think Rust Belt. Now we're looking like geniuses 4 years later when the entire emphasis is around digitizing manufacturing. And for us, that means we do cohorts of companies that are doing robotics, IoT, industrial systems. Coolest company in our cohort, just raised $10 million last month, is take off-the-shelf cameras, use AI to on the video output, and they can do anomaly detection, safety detection. Super cool because there's no retrograde installations required.
So even though it was difficult at the beginning, you stuck with it as an organization, and now it's paying off. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we certainly stuck with it. I wouldn't say it's paying off. We are a nonprofit. That's another one. Shoot me. How did I get to this stage of my life and start running a nonprofit? So we're totally dependent on some of our amazing founding partners and then corporations. But as you know, corporations are pulling back right now, and all discretionary funding at the university is being cut. So it'll be interesting. We'll survive, but persistence is going to be key here.
How do you do long-term planning in an environment like that?
You don't. No, long term, we're planning to be around because we've only been around for 4 years, so people in the community don't know us yet. And now we're finally starting to get some traction thanks to things like the GeekWire Awards. So we're actually getting inbound for the first time ever. We're to have to find our sweet spot. We started off with incredibly generous startup funds from the university and from Microsoft. And as you know, Microsoft's laying people off. Funding things like this is not high on their list of priorities now. But we've got amazing donors within the community, mostly exited entrepreneurs. So people like Steve Singh, Bill McAleer, Artie Burke, who was door-to-door storage. We have a phenomenal group of funders who are keeping this going right now.
So Emer, you've been around the Seattle tech community a long time, like many of us. When you look at a night like this and think about the strengths and weaknesses of the community, like what are your thoughts about the Seattle and the Pacific Northwest tech community and the state of the community and the industry here in 2025?
Oh my God, that's a total doozy, right? So we depend totally on mentor time. So we have 50 to 60 mentors that last year gave us almost 3,000 hours of time. And this is people who are super busy. Like one of our mentors in manufacturing is Rob Morrison, founding CEO of Blue Origin, took them from 10 to 1,500 people, now has a startup that's going to mine helium-3 off the moon. Just amazing. Ingrid Pulse, another amazing Seattle entrepreneur who basically was the first translational investigator out of the Institute of Protein Design, created an enzyme that's going to digest gluten if you have celiac disease, sold it to Takeda, and is back doing it again. The convening power of the university is incredible. If I ask people for a favor, the default bit's on. They want to help. They're apologetic if they can't. That's why we're successful, and that's the thing that the community has. If you think about the University of Washington capital campaign, the last one they did, 50% of that $6 billion that came from people who never went to the UW. The willingness of people in this community, because we've got the UW wrapper around what we're doing to help startups. So our mentors, not only do they give us their time, they open up their Rolodexes, they invest in these companies. It's been amazing. It's been so heartwarming for me to actually end up doing something like this that really just does show you the good of why people want to get this community really, on superpower.
Well, it's kind of cool. You and your organization, but you are being recognized tonight as a geek who gives back. How does that feel?
Amazing. You know why? Because when I look back, first thing I saw was I thought it was a mistake because I thought, oh my God, I'm not housing the homeless, I'm never. And then I went back to the last person who is one of my all-time heroes and mentors, Ed Lasowska. When Ed got this award, I was like, holy crap, I'm finally getting an award Ed got. Yeah.
That is the gold standard in the Seattle tech community. Well, Emer Dooley, thank you very much.
Thank all of you. This is amazing. Thank you.
Emer Dooley, Creative Destruction Lab, one of our recipients of the Geeks Give Back Awards here at the GeekWire Awards 2025. We'll be right back with more from the GeekWire Awards at the Showbox Sodo.
I'm Brian Westbrook with GeekWire Studios. On this episode of Money Hacks presented by BECU, we chat with Stacey Black, BECU lead financial educator, and answer your financial questions. Stacey, one of the questions that came up is managing miscellaneous expenses. You have a tip specifically for streaming services.
I go through and list all my subscriptions, streaming services. I take a look at my bank account and see what's coming out and make sure I remember everything, or my credit card statement, and list them all out and the amounts. Then you want to evaluate what you're really using. I'm not using all of the streaming services, and in fact, I forgot about one that I signed up for, right? So this is going to give us a clear accounting of what we have and what we're using.
This is a great idea to save money on those miscellaneous expenses. We'll also talk about living paycheck to paycheck, how to buy a home, and whether your financial plan is working for you. Take a look at all of the episodes of Money Hacks at geekwire.com/BECU.
Find more information at becu.org. All right, I'm here with Laura Ruderman of the Technology Alliance. She is the CEO of the Tech Alliance. Laura, for the 2 or 3 people in the GeekWire podcast audience who don't know what the Tech Alliance is, give us your elevator pitch. What do you do and who do you serve?
So we are a business-oriented nonprofit that was started by folks like Bill Sr. and Tom Alberg, John Stanton, Ed Lazowska, and others back in the late 90s to help create Washington State as a hub of the innovation economy. It was really clear that Silicon Valley was planning for its future, and Washington State needed to also. And so they came together, and the idea was, and this seems obvious now, but if you cast your mind back almost 30 years, those people in your audience who are old enough to cast their minds back almost 30 years, both the Washington State economy and the innovation economy were very different. And so the idea is that to be a hub of the innovation economy, you need a skilled and adaptable workforce, you need abundant innovation capacity, and you need a strong entrepreneurial climate. And in order to get those, you need to bring together the research and academic institutions, the state elected officials, and the private sector. So at a very high level, we exist to bring together those 3 communities to work on those 3 issues.
So Laura, from the perspective of your member companies, the people that you talk with in the industry, what are the biggest shifts that you're seeing right now, the biggest challenges and the things that companies are having to navigate in the tech industry and the world writ large, and how are you seeing them adapt to those challenges and shifts?
So one of the things that's really interesting about the Technology Alliance is that despite our name, because technology or tech meant something different in the late 90s, Boeing was a tech company, was high tech. We really are about the innovation economy. And so we represent not just tech, but life sciences and clean tech and aerospace. And we look at those issues that are common across all of those, if you will, innovation economy sectors. And I think for all of them right now, one big shift is, of course, artificial intelligence. And we did a policy conference back in November called Fueling the AI Revolution, People, Power, and Purpose, about all of the places that we're going to be affected and need to shift, both to continue to power forward Washington State as, one of the real centers of power around AI, but also how is general education going to have to shift, because we're all going to have to know how to use AI on some level. So I think across industries, whether you're talking about life sciences, and now, we've got biotech and tech bio, those kinds of shifts. But I think the thing that everybody is dealing with is twofold. It is uncertainty on the federal level, and whether you like the move fast and break things, or you don't love that, uncertainty is bad for business. Even the most fast-moving startups in rapidly shifting industries will tell you that there is some degree of certainty that you need. So I think that has just thrown everybody for a loop. The other thing that we are currently dealing with is a state legislature and as a former legislator, I say this with all due respect, but the state legislature has really shifted since I was there. And we are dealing with a legislature that does not seem to understand that we are both we're the most trade-dependent state in the nation. We are also the most tech-dependent state in the nation. And when you look at the amount of our GDP, the percentage of our GDP that comes in just from the tech industry, but then add in aerospace and life sciences and clean tech, right? We are the fusion capital of the world with 4 or 5 active fusion companies, including Helion, which is one of the largest and most well-funded in the world, right? Those companies drive our economy. The research dollars that come in to the University of Washington and PNRI and ISB and all of those research dollars drive our economy, and the legislature really needs to understand that those businesses will locate where it makes the most sense for them to locate. And I have to say, when this rhetoric started happening, I kind of put on my former legislator hat and said, yeah, Microsoft's not going to move. And that's probably true. But
what about the next Microsoft?
Well, yes, there is opportunity cost, right? And we do not measure opportunity cost. But the other thing is that 5 years ago, I don't think, you'd have to fact check me on this, that Microsoft had any jobs in Vancouver, BC. And now they have thousands. And
they might have had a few hundred.
They might have had a few hundred, but it is significant now. And so what is happening is we are not looking at, a Washington Monument problem that they're just going to move wholesale, right? But we are looking at a deflating balloon. And when Microsoft slowly 5, 10, 15,000 out of, whatever, the 50 or so that they have now, as those slowly go other places where there are more favorable tax, cost of living, all of those kinds of things, that happens slowly enough. I mean, we all hate the frog in the boiling water analogy, but it happens slowly enough that you don't really notice it until you are, holy cow, why are we here? Why don't we have the revenues that we thought, right? Look at what's happening to the city of Seattle revenues. So it's one thing if those jobs move from Seattle to Bellevue, cool, it's still in King County. But what happens when those jobs move from Seattle to Austin, or Seattle to Vancouver, BC, or Seattle to Dublin? That is a real problem. At some point, the goose's golden eggs are half the size they used to be, and you don't get as much nutrition.
So Laura, this could be a hour-long podcast, and maybe we should do that actually. But this, I'm sure, foreshadows some of the topics that will be held at a couple of upcoming events that you're going to be holding.
Yes, so we are very excited that on May 20th, we are having our annual State of Technology luncheon, where the keynote conversation will be between Brad Smith talking about not the last 50 years, he's done with that, they've had their anniversary. GeekWire did a great event that I was so sorry I couldn't come to, but this will be the first big event where he's talking about the next 50 years in conversation with GeekWire's own Jonathan Spizzato. So we are very excited about that. And then 12 days later, because we are gluttons for punishment, we are doing our second annual Seattle Investor Summit Plus Showcase, where you will get to meet out-of-town corporate investors. And also, we are showcasing up to almost 100 Washington State startups from across a variety of industry sectors. And it'll be interesting to hear what some of them have to say about what kinds of things they're thinking about as they think about where to grow their companies.
Laura Ruderman from the Technology Alliance, thank you very much for talking with me.
It's always a pleasure.
We'll have more after this from the GeekWire Awards at the Showbox Sodo. AI is moving fast. Are we keeping up? Join Seattle University's Ethics and Tech Conference on Wednesday, June 18th to explore the evolving legal and policy landscape governing AI. Register at seattleu.edu/ethics. That's Seattle University's Ethics and Tech Conference, June 18th, seattleu.edu/ethics. Next up, Anand Subbaraj, CEO at Zuper, one of the finalists for CEO of the Year, a category presented by Baker Tilly. For people who aren't familiar with Zuper, tell me a little bit about what the company does.
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much for having us here, one of the finalists for CEO of the Year. Zuper is into field service management. Any business that have people on the field performing installation, maintenance, and repair, we offer a platform, software as a service for them to manage their work. Scheduling, dispatching, work order management, and many other aspects for these technicians to enable and empower them to perform their work better.
That's great. And I know you had a long career at Microsoft before you went into the startup world. Can you give me a sense for the kinds of shifts that you're seeing in your business these days and how you're navigating those at Zuper?
Yeah, I spent about 15 years at Microsoft prior to starting Zuper, and I've seen the technology shifts in the last 3 decades. And I have been extremely excited about technology and what are the possibilities now with AI. And we are all talking about AI. And I was recently talking to someone, they said that AI is not going to solve the problems of fixing kitchen faucets or cleaning gutter. But the whole idea with Zuper AI, we are an AI-first company, is to enable all these service businesses seamlessly perform their work on the field and to make this entire process of fixing kitchen faucet or cleaning gutters to make that process more efficient. But net, I am extremely excited and motivated with the art of possibilities with technology.
It's really interesting because you would not think that AI would come into effect with something like plumbing or something like that. Just this week, I was at an auto repair shop and, I'm not a car person, but I wanted to understand the bill and I uploaded it to AI and it explained it to me. So I could see where in field service, for example, a customer might be able to understand a bill better or a service technician might be able to explain it better. Am I kind of on the right track with what you're talking about?
You're absolutely on the right track. What we are trying to do here is offer AI agents for all these different personas that we serve. Just think of a situation that a technician is on top of a roof trying to take pictures, taking notes, doing measurements. Our goal is to make that technician go hands-free so that they do not have to type as they are on the roof. And a lot of these technicians are on these kinds of situations where technology, they need to adapt, but it becomes an inhibitor, a challenge, because they are in challenging situations and environments. And our goal is to leverage AI to make their work better, whether for them to understand what work they need to do, what is the history of the work that is done for the customer, the history of the machine and the equipment that they are trying to repair. And what we have seen is that in this industry of blue-collar workforce, skilled workforce, there is a huge shortage of resources. There were over 2 million jobs posted last year, and there are still many open jobs out there. Most of the organizations are struggling with labor shortage and skill gap. And with AI, the goal is to transform these organizations. Now, a technician that has joined a business on day one has the same kind of information as that of a 20 years experienced technician on the same job, because AI is able to synthesize, normalize the information and make it available to the technicians.
It's really an amazing time in the world, I got to say. I mean, if somebody like me can figure out something like a plumbing repair, or at least understand it, or a car repair, boy, that is a whole new era. So last question here. You are up for CEO of the Year. What's your secret? What makes you a great CEO?
Yeah, I think great question. So my superpower is being engaged with the customers. I am obsessed with providing the best experience to the customers. And whether I was working at Microsoft or here at Zuper, what I'm trying to do is create an environment, create a framework of a customer-first approach of problem solving. And that is exactly what we are doing at Zuper. I was doing ride-alongs with a roofing company last week. I was there on top of a roof. understanding how they use our product. But this is the kind of superpower that is helping me transform the lives of our customers to create products that our customers really care to use. And that is the secret of my success.
Anand Subbaraj, the CEO of Zuper, thank you very much for speaking with me.
Thank you.
All right, I am here with Aviel Ginzburg. He is the general partner at Foundations. He is one of the honorees tonight at the GeekWire Awards in the Geeks Give Back category presented by BECU. First off, Aviel, congrats on the honor.
Thank you.
So for people who aren't familiar with Foundations, it's actually something that's relatively new on the Seattle startup scene. What is it?
So Foundations is an invite-only community of founders anchored around a physical space in Capitol Hill. We have a founder in residence program right now with about 45-ish founders and residents who are in sort of the beginning stage of building their business, everywhere from I just quit my job to I just finished up YC and I'm trying to keep up the pace. But what we are is a mission-oriented organization. We're actually a B Corp, and what we're trying to do is make Seattle a better place to be a founder.
So you were involved in Techstars Seattle. You've obviously been involved in a variety of different startups and venture capital initiatives. What convinced you that this was the need, and why was Foundations the right answer?
So when I looked around me, besides the fact that Techstars left and that was a mess of its own, the world right now rhymes with when I started my career in 2008 through 2010, where you had the rise of open source, you had the rise of cloud, you had the invention of SaaS. It's ridiculous to think that business model didn't even exist. And no one had experience, everyone was learning at the same time, and there was a ridiculous amount of excitement, and people really just wanted to work together. And in that environment, I started my first company. I learned a lot from other folks, and there was this moment in time where truly the rising tide lifted all boats in Seattle, and I felt like there was the same opportunity for that again, and I wanted to create something that was not about value capture, but the community supporting itself to make this just a better place.
You're wearing a hat for one of your portfolio companies, Ravenna?
They make the best swag, yes. Ravenna, who just announced a $15 million seed round today.
Remind me what Ravenna does?
So Ravenna is an internal ticketing system to replace, and the larger organizations, things like ServiceNow, but things you might do internally around spreadsheets or other things like that to help keep track of internal tasks, everything from essentially needing to set up, give me access to Figma, all the way to how do I do this?
All right, so one question I'm asking everybody is, what are the major shifts that you're seeing writ large in the industry these days? And how are they impacting your organization, and how are you navigating those shifts?
I mean, at this moment in time, that's one of the most difficult questions ever, because the reality is that the only thing you can plan for is that you can't plan long term. What's happening with everything from large language models to the macroeconomic climate to what we're seeing in our own politics here locally that make it more difficult to be an entrepreneur. Really, all you can do is put one foot in front of the other and say, what am I good at? What am I the best of the world at? And how can I make an impact? Whether that's how can I solve a customer's problem or how can I solve another problem in the world? And so really what that comes down to is I think people have to be, as VCs, you always want to say, what's the big vision? What happens in 10 years? I think right now you have to be very pragmatic and say, what do the tools look like today and how can I create value? And that's really all that matters.
How are you using AI day to day?
So the way that we're actually building Foundations is as a super lean organization. We have no employees. So we've actually built a whole bunch of internal agents that handle everything from scheduling to introductions and a whole host of other things, including our application process. And it's kind of wild. I modeled after a lot of what our internal programming team did back when I worked at Techstars, and we were able to create fully functional agents where we've scheduled hundreds of meetings and no human has been in between.
Crazy. All right, last question. The theme of the night is retro video games here. Are you a gamer?
I am a gamer.
And what's your favorite classic video game that maybe you played as a kid growing up?
So my favorite is Miss Pac-Man. I actually donated my machine to Foundations. Why it's my favorite game is it was the first non-deterministic video game. So there's actually one of the first random number generators, so you don't know exactly what the ghosts are going to do. And so there's this extra element that reminds me of building a startup, where it's no matter how perfect the execution is, you never know what the world is going to do to you.
I love it. That is the perfect note to end this podcast from the GeekWire Awards. Aviel Ginzburg, the general partner at Foundations, and a recipient tonight of one of 3 Geeks Give Back awards here at the GeekWire Awards. Aviel, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for tonight.
See the show notes for links to all of our coverage from the GeekWire Awards, including all the finalists and winners, and photos and video highlights from the event. Thanks to Astound Business Solutions for its longtime sponsorship of the GeekWire Awards and for its support of this podcast from the event as well. Thanks to Baird for sponsoring the opening reception, and to our gold sponsors, JLL, Baker Tilly, BECU, WTIA, Alltech, Wilson Sonsini, and First Tech. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with a new episode of the GeekWire podcast.